Oh, I caught it just exactly at the right time. Okay, so I told him, I said, yeah, I've read it a little bit, and I had read it a little bit. I read the Book of Revelation a little bit, and anyway, it had to do with, I stand at the door and knock, that passage, and I remember, reading that and wondering, how do you sup with you? How do you sup? If I ask you, how does that work? And I didn't grasp it. I didn't quite grasp it, but I knew that was important. So then, this guy, he comes back a week later and he says, "What are you doing? What are you doing after work?" And I said, "Well, I'm going down to the gym and work out." There was a little YMCA outside of this. I was in Bremerton, and our ship was in a shipyard. It was the Enterprise, and it was going through a major overhaul. So I said, "Well, I'm going down to the gym, to the YMCA, and I'm going to work out." He goes, "Well," "Can I meet you there like 5 o'clock, 5:30?" I go, "Sure." So we worked the rest of the day, and after work I went down to the gym and I worked out. Well, I worked out for about an hour, and it was getting on 5 o'clock or so. So I'm standing outside, and I don't see him around, so I thought, well, and I had this feeling like I should stay. So I did. So I went back in, and I did a whole another workout. And another hour and a half goes by. So I get done, take a shower, get dressed, go out, and I'm standing out there in the street, and the street I was on was like the street that the ferry ties up to, down the way a little ways. There's a little beach over here to my right, and up this way is the shipyard. So I'm looking around, and I don't, see him nearby, and I look down the street. There was an intersection, and I'm looking down the street, and there's all these little shops, and model shop and some pubs and things like that. So I'm looking way down the street, and I see this guy walking, and he's walking with a bicycle. And I'm like, "Oh, and is that him?" And sure enough, it was him. And he come walking up, and he said, "Man," he goes, like, "Sorry, I'm late, man. He goes, "I had a flat, and I couldn't fix it, and I had to walk 7 miles." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So no big deal, So then he said, "Well, come on." So we walked down towards the ferry pier, and then we walked off to this little beach. And he says to me, he says, "Well, you want to meet him?" And I was like, "Meet who?" He goes, "You want to meet God?" And I'm thinking, well, I'll try anything once, So I said, "All right." And so he goes, "Okay." So we go down to the beach, and he says, "Okay, spread your arms." And I said, "Spread my arms." And he goes, "Okay, now I want you to talk to God just like you're talking to me. And just ask him straight up, come into your heart, give you your sins, and you'll follow him all the days of your life." And all that. And so I did it, and he helped me through it, and I did it. And just as I started doing it, this car came around this turn not too far away with a whole bunch of teenagers hooping and hollering, screaming and yelling and all this stuff to try to, it was like a little bit of a distraction, and I just tuned it out, and I said, "I'm going to do this if it's the last thing I do." And I did it. And so then I didn't feel any lightning bolts or anything, but I did feel different. I felt like this load just went phew, off my chest. And he says to me now, he goes, "The devil don't like what you just did, and he's going to give you a hard time." And I'm like, "Well, gosh, man, why didn't you tell me that before, And as a joke, but he was serious, and I was like, "Okay." So I turned around, we both turned around, and we started walking back up from the beach up to the walk, up the street. And I could see this McDonald's, and I could see some other businesses and things like that. And they looked different. It was like the Lord removed a little bit of a veil over my eyes, and I could see the corporate thing, the entity of it, the world kind of deal, where, it wasn't you know, I mean, of the concrete, the stop signs, the lights, everything that was, you could say, man-made or engineered by man, you know, just looked different. And I was just like, oh, that's different, you know. I kind of kept to myself. And he was explaining to me now, you know, this is what you need to do. You need to read the Word every day, and it's nothing, and pray, and the Lord will help you grow, and you'll get stronger, and you'll grow, and you become, you know. And a few other things he told me. I mean, you know, we had duties we had to perform too, you know, being in the Navy and all. So we were, you know, that was on my mind a little bit too in it. But I was just like, you know, a little bit taken aback by how things looked again, you know, different. And then I remembered that dream, and I was just like, whoa, that was from you, wasn't it? And it was like, you know, I was like, oh. So then later, years later, okay, I'm in a Christian bookstore, and I was trying to soak up as much information about prophecy and all of that as I could. And this was in the late 80s, early 90s, right? And I'm learning all I can, but I'm reading the Word and I'm reading the Bible, and the Lord giving me some dreams after that. And what He was showing me was different than what a lot of these guys were talking about. And they were talking about how Babylon was this city that was going to become a big powerhouse in the Middle East somewhere again, and that, you know, God was going to destroy it and all this stuff, and this and that, and how the temple was going to be rebuilt, and you know, la da da da. And it was sort of like, you know, their interpretation of what they had learned, okay, and it was like something was not meshing with that story. So I mean, there was Hal Lindsey was out there talking about all this kind of stuff, and there were other people out there too. And I followed Hal Lindsey's stuff very closely, and you know, but even he, as far as I know, he didn't quite have it right either. And at least it wasn't like what God was showing me. And so I'm in this Christian bookstore years later, and I'm looking at all this stuff, and I picked this one book out because I have every other book in there, in this other book, you know, and I'm not too happy with it because it's like, I know it's not going to tell me what I really want to know, but it does have some tidbits in it. So I put it down on the counter, and I'm talking to the owner, and the owner knows me very well because I've been in and out of there 100 times. So I look over at this other section as I'm getting my wallet out and stuff, and I look over, and there's a worship section, right? And I never thought to look over there for prophecy information. So I'm looking, and this book is pinging at me. It's just like pinging, you know. It's like, what's going, what? You know? So I walk over and I look at it, and I reach down, pick it up, and look at it, and it's this guy walking through flames, and it says "Through the Fire Without Burning" by Dimitri Duduman. And I thought, okay, you know. So I flipped the book over, and on the back was some of the text from inside the book, and it said, and the angel showed me California, Florida, New York, and he said, this is Sodom and Gomorrah. In 1 hour, this will burn. And I'm like, this guy knows. This guy knows what the Lord's been showing me. This guy knows. And this was before internet or any of that. So I was like, gosh. So I bought that book, ran out to the car, got in the car, drove down the street, pulled over, and read the whole book right there. And I knew that this dude knew what the Lord was showing me. And what I was suspecting all along was that the United States was Babylon. And I knew from what he'd shown me that there was going to be a huge, gigantic war, and a lot of missiles and a lot of rockets and bombs and everything else going on there. So later, I don't know, a few weeks later or whatever, I managed to figure out a way to get a hold of him, and I talked to his daughter, actually. And I said, look, I've got some gear, I've got some clothes, I've got some stuff, because they had this ministry where they took clothing and food and things and sent it to Romania. Because now, Ceausescu was dead, and Dimitri could send things back to his home country, and he had a ministry of. He set up an orphanage over there and all this stuff. He did a lot of good work over there, and his son has still got the ministry today, and he's still doing it. And he's sending stuff to Ukraine and all these places that are getting bombed to oblivion. He's got good ministry. So anyway, because Dimitri's passed away, but so I arranged to go down there. So he only lives 60 miles from me, so I went down to Fullerton and drove in and parked in front of this, like, it was like a duplex kind of a apartment thing, one level, and nothing fancy. And I walked in, and there was like a kind of a big patio area. There's a name for that, but I can't think of what it is. But anyway, and then in the back was a large garage, and in the garage, that's where they were. They were packing stuff in this big truck. And I went back there, and I was just sitting there watching them, and then they were finished. He did some business with his son, and then he and I walked back to the house, and his daughter was interpreting for me because he didn't speak English very well. So we went inside his house, and his wife wasn't feeling too good, and she was on the couch, and they had like very sparse furniture. I mean, like they had a table from like 1950, with metal posts, and it was a long, nice table, a long table, but it was just, there was nothing fancy. I mean, they had just enough, And in the middle of the table, Dimitri grabbed and he put on the middle of the table this little bowl of hard candy, So he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I grabbed a piece of candy, and he smiled at me, and I put it in my mouth, and then he took one and put it in his mouth. And then we sat there and we talked for a little bit through his daughter, and he said to me something really weird, and I was like, whoa, okay. He said, you're not the first intelligence guy to come see me, because that's what. So I just was watching it, and I just realized that I got cut off when I was talking about Dimitri there. So he said to me, he said, you're not the first intelligence guy to come see me. And I don't think I told him I was an intelligence guy, or that I was affiliated with intelligence. I was in the Navy years before, and I was in intelligence, but I don't think I mentioned it to him, and I was just like, how does he know I'm intelligence, But then again, I thought to myself, if I'm not the first guy, that means somebody else has been here before me, and I'm thinking, well, I hope that's a good thing, I hope that somebody in our government has got their head on, and they're looking into this, because our country's in, the crosshairs, and some bad things are going to be coming down on top of it, and but I imagine it was probably FBI or somebody like that, because at the same time, see, Dimitri had been going around the churches, and he'd been preaching to the churches, him and his son, and he'd been on a lot of different shows. He was videotaped by the Prophecy Club, and you can look it up on YouTube. You can see his deal. I can't think of the guy's name, but it's not Hal, it's something else. Anyway, Stan from Prophecy Club, okay? And Stan's a bit younger back then too. And but anyway, so he'd been going around to all these churches and on these venues and warning the churches, look, this is what's coming, you need to repent, And so evidently either the FBI or the CIA or somebody in the government got wind of Dimitri and went over to have a chat with him, and I would like to have been a fly on the wall during that conversation. But in a way, I felt, I was hoping, I felt good that somebody else within our government was looking into, the prophecies that were explaining the future of this country. And I hope they took it to heart. So I just wanted to put that in there because I knew I cut off there. And anyway, so again I say you know, get ready. So anyway, he was like one of the few people that I knew what I knew, what the Lord was showing me. And then later, I found some other information, you know, and there was a place that was about the same time as the Oklahoma City bombing and all of that, and the Clintons and all of that. And you know, there was a lot of things that were screwy going on behind the scenes that were, I mean, there was the Branch Davidian thing, and then, which was leading up to, you know, 9/11, that happened, and then, I mean, things were simmering, you know, but I knew that the Lord was showing me something about the system, the beast system too, you know, and how basically the country was shifting, and basically tyranny was rising, you know, and you know, it's out there now, but it's not as severe as it's going to be, and it's going to happen probably, you know, very quickly, because these entities that have, you know, this goal of subjugating everyone in the United States, they have a sinister plot, and that's basically just to ambush us all, okay? And the way they're going to do that is they're going to set off all these bombs in the country and create this situation where everything's in chaos. And they have to take, you know, more dire measures to restore order and all this stuff. In a nutshell, that's it, you know. And a lot of people are going to die, because there's going to be a lot of people that, you know, were raised a way that, you know, they're free people, and you know, you just don't, it's like pulling teeth. It's going to be like pulling teeth, and with no anesthetic. So there's going to be people that are going to stand their ground, and they're going to say no, nope. And a lot of those folks, you know, God bless them, you know, the people. Demetrius said, one of the things he said was, the people from the middle of the country are going to start fighting against the government. And I've often wondered, how would that start? What would be the catalyst for that? Well, you know, when these nukes go off, and this, you know, legislation is brought forth and enforced by these goons, that's how, okay? And a lot of people are going to say, you know, even, you know, the Second Amendment is the only thing that has kept the wolves at bay to this very day. And when the thing about, I think Jefferson said, he said, you know, the beauty of it is, it's there. The day they try to take it away is the day you'll need it. And yeah, I reckon he was a smart guy. And Patrick Henry said something similar, you know, he said, to the point, you know, the only thing about your freedom is that the only way it can be preserved is with downright force. And if you give up that force, you're done. So, you know, that's where we're at. So, pray about that, you know, what God wants you to do about that. And some of you don't have to, you know, you're not even going to think about it twice. You know? me. But there was a man who lived a long time ago in Israel. He was actually a kid, and he told his kingdom and his king, he said, "Look, don't fight the Babylonians, man. Just don't fight them. You know, he was very stubborn. And he wouldn't listen. He says, if you don't listen, this whole place is going to be burned to the ground." Well, he didn't listen, and not only was the place burned to the ground, and every stone was thrown off, and the gates were smashed, but all the people were taken captive and sent back to Babylon. And his sons were killed in front of him, and his eyes were gouged out, you know, that king. So, you know, it's an individual basis kind of a deal. You know, I know what I'm gonna do, and you know, I'm gonna have to live with that, and I'm ready to live with that. I mean, or die with it. So it's on you. I can't tell you what to do. Only God can tell you what to do. You know, there are some people that have different gifts. Okay, some people have gifts of teaching, preaching, healing, and there are warriors. Okay, and you know, from a young age, I was raised. You know, push me once, okay. Push me twice, you're done. So, Nehemiah. If you haven't read Nehemiah, you might want to read Nehemiah. For all you warriors out there. And, you know, if that means you run into the woods and eating bark, or whatever, caterpillars, grass, then that's what it means, you know. And the Lord will provide. And, you know, I'm not a finished work. Maybe I'm going to learn something about all that. But it's just where we're at right now, okay? They're coming. And there ain't nothing going to stop it. So get ready, you know? Don't blow it off. I would go shopping because it's a pause, right? I mean, right now as I'm talking to you, something would be going on. I don't know. I don't have my news hookup right here. It's a nice day out here. Nobody's shooting at me yet, and I'm going to do a little practice. So I just thought I'd give you a heads up and an update about where my head's at and what I see going down. It's just, you know, what I put out 2 years ago. So if you want to get a little more info, I got videos, you know. I think I've got 70 videos now or something like that, and go back and look at them, okay? Some of them are quick and in your face, you know, hey, wake up, you know, kind of videos, but others are a little more detailed. They get into Chuck Youngbrandt, they get into Joe Brandt, they get into Dimitru and Steve Quayle and all that, Linda Lomax, you know, some of the prophecies that are out there. So, you know, I don't claim to be a prophet. I'm sort of like a watchman kind of dude, you know. I sit on the wall and watch, and I can assemble the information, and I can bring it to a clearer picture a little bit. I'm a puzzle maker, a puzzle builder. Okay, that's what I am. Anyway, and I hope I'm a few other good things. But anyway, I wish you guys the best, and I love you guys, and pray for me, and I'll pray for you guys. And don't give up, no matter what happens. Okay, don't give up. Don't deny Him. Do not deny the Lord. Don't do it. Roger out.